Good morning.
Morning, Kim.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well,
Good
thank
morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. So I'm all ready to do roll call. I've got the board docs all set up, and I'm going to go ahead and have myself on mute and off video for the meeting so that I'm not distracting anybody.
Okay.
Especially since I'm, typing away like this. Nobody needs to see me doing that. But just wanted to check in and tell you all good morning and see if you need anything from me beyond the usual.
No, thank you for being here for us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. I do have a real quick question. So I know that Dr. Diaz, Laura Diaz, and Dr. Stark have the titles of doctor. Susan Benjamin, Lene Alme, and Carmen Trujillo, do they prefer Ms. or Mrs.? You know, so that I can.
I don't know.
Okay.
We call Mrs. Benjamin, and I'm not sure about Miss. I would say Miss Almi and Miss Trujillo. So.
Okay. Yeah, when I do roll call, I'd like to call them by their titles as opposed to their first names.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. See you in a bit.
The other question, were there any community comments? I did email Sarah this morning, and I haven't heard back from her.
I am not aware of any, but
Okay.
I didn't see an email either.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then I won't worry about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You say what?
It is where you see this little microphone.
Right.
Right now it's on,
Okay.
but when the meeting is going on, they want you to turn it on. You have to make sure that it's on.
This that one. Okay.
So now my question is, can you hear something?
Not yet.
Where are the sounds actually?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
Morning. All right.
Okay. Louisa's here too.
And we're gonna start the meeting, I believe. It is 10:01. I'd like to welcome all those people who are listening. We appreciate you being part of this. And I will call the meeting to order at 10:02. Dr. Weeks?
You're on mute.
I'm on mute. Oh,
I was on mute. If we would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and if we would post the flag for our viewers.
Allegiance, flag, United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Liberty and justice to all.
thanks, Dr. Weeks. I added this roll call so we could see who's here. So Ms. Sinclair, will you call the roll?
Yes, I will. Mrs. Susan Benjamin,
Are you going to go in alphabetical order?
I'm going in the order that it has up here.
Oh, okay.
On my screen.
Here.
Dr. Louisa Stark,
Here.
Miss Lene Ami, Dr. Laura Diaz,
Here.
and Miss Carmen Trujillo. So I have Miss Ami and Miss Trujillo is not here.
Okay, we do have a quorum at this point, so hopefully Ms. Trujillo
My
will
apologies.
joining
I
us.
didn't realize I was fully muted. Miss Kim Carmen Trujillo is here.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are only missing at this point Miss Ami, and she may join us later.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on the participants list and change it if she does join us.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Need a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move.
A second?
I'll second. This is Carmen Trujillo.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Aye.
There are no nays. The adoption of the agenda is approved. We're on to Dr. Weeks, awards, recognitions, and announcements.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the governing board, audience at home, thank you so much for joining us at the Phoenix Elementary May 6th governing board meeting. In your agenda, we had thought we were going to show a video of Edison sing-along, but we're unable to do that. So we'll bring that to you at a later time. So Madam Chair, members of the board, if it's okay to you, I would like to move into our COVID-19 report.
I would like to say one thing, Dr. Weeks.
Yes.
This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and typically we would be, there'd be cookies in the schools, and there'd be all kinds of, festivities going on in each of the schools to just highlight all the wonderful things that teachers do every day for our kids. And of course, we don't have that going on, but I would just like to mark the day. Yesterday was the big day. This is the week. And thank all of the teachers and their support staff who have been so diligent and so flexible and learned all kinds of new things during this unusual time. And besides that, what they do every day, because I know how much they care about their class and their children and their school. So thank you to every teacher and their support staff out there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's it.
Well said, Mrs. Benjamin. And yes, it is Teacher Appreciation Week. And so some things that we are doing from the district to show appreciation to our teachers, nurses, and staff as we appreciate the Phoenix L family. So we're asking folks to follow us on Facebook at PHX Schools. All week long, we will be honoring the teachers, our star awardees, nurses, and all staff on social media. So please follow us on social media. And we typically host our Evening of Excellence and Education dinner this week. And unfortunately, we're not able to do that this year. And typically star awardees and all staff are honored. So we're taking it digital this year through social media. So please stay tuned for that. The Phoenix One Foundation is providing an opportunity drawing for a $50 gift card to host the Evening of Excellence in Education. And this will be held on each campus this week. So there are a few things for Teacher Appreciation Week, but I appreciate you saying that. And I know our whole board appreciates our teachers, our staff, and our entire Phoenix L family.
And I have to step away for 1 second because I forgot my phone. I'll need it in just a minute. So, oh, okay. Never mind. I have someone helping me. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry. So on to your update, your COVID-19 update.
Yes, and lots of celebrations, lots of appreciation to the frontline employees for serving 71,838 meals in April. That is a lot of meals served. Over 40 child nutrition, warehouse and transportation, and family members, Phoenix L family members have been instrumental in ensuring meals are available. And we really appreciate their efforts. Now it's getting hot, and I think we're all getting a little worried about folks that are out there doing work in the heat. It was so nice. We had a wonderful spring, and then we got a whammo with the heat. And so we need to pay special attention to our folks who are out there, social distancing, providing for the community. I know the community appreciates the support. And I want to give a special shout out to the Phoenix One Foundation for providing canopies and insulated bags to support our feeding program. Thanks, Foundation. Some other frontline employees that aren't always visible at our board meetings is our plant services and business services team. These include our custodians, our plumbers, electricians, grounds crew, warehouse, AC techs, etc. And these folks are making sure that our buildings are safe because they're empty and continue to be well maintained because buildings still need to have maintenance, even when there's nobody in them. Our business services team, some of them come into work every day to make sure that our employees are paid properly, accurately, and on time, that invoices are processed and supplies and services are processed, especially those related to the COVID-19, are available to our frontline employees. So thank you. Thank you to that business services team. With regards to human resources, they have leveled, balanced themselves to a new normal, and they are open for business, providing support to all of the folks in and around the district who need them. They will schedule one-on-one appointments. They have a digital process for this. And currently they are working with the open enrollment for insurance process. We will have insurance for the next school year for our employees. Thank you to everyone, including the governing board, for making that possible. And when folks have questions about those benefits, human resources is there, Loud is there, the HR team is there to answer those questions. And they've really put themselves out there to make sure that that high level of customer service is maintained. Also, we have sent out the last wave of work agreements and contracts for next year, and we appreciate everybody's patience in that process. Our goal by this time is to be fully staffed, and I'm proud to say that through the efforts of our entire district, our academic and HR teams, that we have fewer than 10 general education teacher vacancies. That is huge, especially during this time. And we have just a handful of special ed openings. We're on track to meeting our goal to be fully staffed, thanks to a retention rate of 93%. That is better than any of our friends in the neighborhood. And I'm very proud of that. So we will continue to offer that high level of service. Thank you, HR team. The 8th grade promotion celebrations will include a message from the board president and superintendent congratulating our 8th graders for moving on to high school. And we will be videoing those messages soon. Those messages will be posted on our website, and promotion certificates will be mailed home. I am happy to say that through the autonomy of our different school sites, that individual schools are adding their own unique touches. For example, sending out a link to 8th graders with pictures taken during the school year. And we are very aware of the FERPA guidelines, and those FERPA requirements will be followed. I do need to let the board know that summer peer will be canceled this year for obvious reasons, and that our lottery for enrolling the 2021 peer program will be held when we return to school. The friends and family of the Phoenix One Foundation are donating dollars directly to our families for fundamental needs such as food, diapers, rent, etc. This week, approximately $7,500 will be provided direct to families as the needs are identified carefully through district leaders and principals. So thank you, friends of the foundation, for reaching out to our community and providing those much needed resources. And finally, we have a list of new meal times effective from.
Dr. Weeks, you're breaking up quite a bit.
Did I break up? I'm sorry.
You're better. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. So we do have new meal times. Hold on. There we go. We do have new meal times. And I'm not going to read the times to you, but I will read the locations to you. Bethune, Capitol, Ute Park, Lowell, Herrera, Edison, Whittier, Magnet, Dunbar, Garfield. So those are the feeding locations. And like I said earlier, lots and lots of meals being distributed to appreciative families who really need the food. So, and that concludes my COVID-19 report for now, except for two briefs. One will come from Troy Harris, and a second will come from Denise McLaughlin. So Armstrong, can we start with you? Try it. You're on mute if you're out.
Yeah, sorry. 1 second. There we go. Hello, Madam President, members of the board, cabinet, Dr. Weeks. Hope everyone's staying safe and staying healthy and is doing okay. So we have, I think, over 3,000 devices that have been handed out. It was 2,996 as of last week, and I think Faith North just handed out a few more. So I think we've just topped the 3,000 device mark. So those are for families that didn't have a device at home for their students to be able to access our Google Classroom and our distance learning. So we're happy to report that we've given out laptops to any family that needs them. The other initiative we have, because we obviously know that we have a lot of families that needed internet access. And I have to shout out Dr. Hidalgo, Sarah Bresnahan, Sherry Zeeb, Anna Guerrero from purchasing. There's a whole team effort to be able to offer our families internet service through Cox if they needed internet service. So families have been signing up through Cox. And also shout out to Cox. They've been giving 60 free days of internet to families who qualify. And the district will be paying for the internet past that point through the end of the calendar year. But as we found, there's some families that aren't in the Cox service area. Maybe their home wasn't wired for Cox service. And Cox, understandably, is reluctant to send people into homes right now to install internet if that's what's needed. So for those families that cannot get Cox, we are working with T-Mobile to get families mobile hotspots. And those hotspots will enable those other families to get internet service. So our goal is every single family who needs internet service will have internet service by the end of this process. And to use a phrase that Sarah Bresnahan's been using a lot, it's one family at a time. So we're dealing with these one situation at a time. You know, some of these, it's going to take a little bit longer to get them on, but we will get them on. We want to have every family have equitable access to all of our technology through the internet and through their laptops. Another thing is families were informed that they're allowed to keep those laptops through the summer if their child is returning to our schools next year. This is so that we can provide summer learning opportunities and enrichment throughout the summer, and those students don't have to feel like they need to now give up those devices and they won't have access to those. So they will have access. So if a student is returning to our district next year, we're just asking that if we're back in session at the beginning of next year, that they just bring those devices back on that first day of school. I think that's it. Is there any questions? Yep, Dr. Weeks.
Troy, can you speak to some of the work that you did on the district website yesterday to make our meetings a little more community friendly?
Yes. And so, Mr. Trujillo, thank you for pointing out that it probably wasn't super clear on how to view our public meeting, how to do community communications. So we went through with Dr. Weeks and Sarah Bresnahan. We went through the whole website and also board docs, and we made some changes on the calendar. We had it hard coded in there that all board meetings were at Emerson Court. So so we had to take those out of the board meetings calendar invites. We changed board docs. So now on the very front page of board docs, it has instructions for if a meeting is virtual, here's how you can access it. And also here's how you can send community communications. So thank you to Mr. Trujillo for pointing that out to us and helping us work through that. And we're going to continue doing that as well. We still have some work to do for future meetings. So yeah, more to come on that, but this is new to all of us. And so I do, if anyone out there has any recommendations for how we can, if you're confused about board meetings or anything like that, just let us know and we can get that resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thanks, Troy.
Back to Dr. Weeks.
Yes, I just want to say thanks to Mr. Heel for bringing that to our attention, and thanks to Troy for getting on it right away. So how about that? Dr. McLaughlin, would you provide some updates? I'm sorry, Mr. Heel, did you have a comment?
No, I just said thanks as well. I appreciate it. Go team, guys.
Well, thank you. And so, Dr. McLaughlin, would you provide an update, please, on our distance learning path forward?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Weeks, and thank you, Mr. Harris. It really has been a heroic team effort to ensure that each one of our students has a laptop in front of them and has access to internet. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. So that will make our distance learning plan even more robust. So I do want to report that we did distribute packets, so I'll call them worksheets, packets, to approximately 25% of our students. But again, we're hoping that those are being pushed aside and our students are engaged in Google Classrooms and our other learning programs, our other learning platforms like Zern, Khan Academy. We do have analytics or data on our use of Google Classrooms across the district. So I just want to share some numbers with you. Of course, the number of Google Classrooms has increased drastically. That line just went up from March 18th until mid-April. So again, Teacher Appreciation Week, yes, as Ms. Benjamin said, we really need to shout out to our teachers for their efforts in changing course at what they thought was the end of a year, but then it became a new year. And they put together Google Classrooms, and we have approximately 630 Google Classrooms up and running with 4,085 active users. That's both students and teachers. The highest number of posts on any given day in our Google Classroom is 2,000 posts, and we remain above 1,000 posts in Google Classrooms on a daily basis. And a post is any sort of communication from a student submitting an assignment, or from a teacher posting a pre-recorded lesson, for example. So that's pretty impressive. For a variety of reasons, our distance learning is very difficult on our families, and it's heartbreaking to our teachers. They are putting forth every effort in communicating with families, texting, calling, even doing some home visits from a physical appropriate distance. But it has been difficult, we will be honest, to ensure that all of our students are participating in the Google Classroom. And even participation from students has been somewhat inconsistent. We will all get used to this new normal, and we will have this in place for the future. Summer school, we're going to continue online learning for summer school. We will hold 3 virtual summer schools. We will hold our traditional K-3 Move On When Reading summer school for our kindergarten through 3rd graders who are struggling in the area of reading. We will have a college and career success academy like we had last year for our incoming 7th and 8th graders. The focus of that summer school is leadership, and we will have an Indian education summer school. The coordinators of these 3 programs have personally contacted each individual student and their families to ensure that they have a laptop, that they have internet access, and if they don't, they will make sure that that happens before the first day of these summer schools. There'll be more information about these summer schools in this Friday's written board update. The other thing we wanted to make the board aware of is that we are forming 3 action teams to gather input and recommendations for the opening of the 2020-2021 school year. These action teams will be composed of district staff as well as parents, and will start their work the week of May 18th. The facilitators of the 3 action teams will report to Cabinet on a weekly basis, making their final recommendations to Cabinet on June 15th, and we will bring these recommendations to the board for what the opening of our 2020-2021 school year will look like at our June 25th board meeting. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves with this work because we are expecting guidelines from ADE on what next school year will look like. Those 3 action teams and the facilitators for each team, Dr. Brown will facilitate the general education work team. And of course, that team is committed to defining a viable instructional pathway for our students, teachers, and community, with a focus on our strategic plan and our district goal of ensuring every student is achieving academic success, even as we are restructuring in response to our global pandemic. Their scope of work includes considerations for professional development, instructional technology, scheduling, and instructional delivery methods, and they will research, discuss, and recommend best options for supporting learning across the district 365 days a year, both in the buildings and at home. Mr. Harris, our MIS director, is an important part of that team. As you can see, CNI is working very closely with MIS to ensure that learning is occurring. Ms. Ray and Ms. West will facilitate the special education work team that will have the same scope of work as the general education team, but will focus on the subgroup of special ed. And then Ms. Wadley will facilitate the trauma-informed practice work team / family support work team. This work actually began last summer. So Ms. Wadley does have a group together and she's inviting others to join. But they will be providing specific or paying specific attention to the impact of COVID-19. The work team will develop a tiered school-wide approach that addresses the needs of staff, students, and families by providing support, education, prevention, and intervention. They have 3 objectives, similar to the other 2 teams. They will develop supportive strategies and professional development for staff regarding the personal and professional impact of COVID-19. They will develop strategies and recommendations for a Tier 1 school-wide trauma-informed approach to support students and families transition back to school. And they will identify and develop strategies and resources for students and families that require Tier 2, 3 interventions and support. And that concludes my COVID-19 update from CNI. Any questions?
Yeah, are there questions for Dr. McLaughlin?
No.
I have a couple. This is Susan. Are you going to send us a list of who's on each of these teams?
We certainly will, yes. They're not formed yet. They will be formed by May 15th.
Okay. And since Ms. Ray is leaving at the end of May, I believe, isn't that correct?
That is correct, Ms. Benjamin. So at that point, our new director of special ed will take over. We hope to bring our new special ed director's name to the board at our next board meeting for approval.
Okay. All right. Where does like transportation fit into those 3 groups?
Great question. I failed to mention that. So these teams will report to cabinet on a weekly basis, and at those cabinet meetings, our operations directors will be a part of those meetings. So that means HR, business services, transportation, plant services, because we're all going to have to be on the same page. So if this is our plan for opening 2021, what does that mean for Dr. Diaz and his team? What do they have to have in place? What does Mr. Para and his team need to have in place? So yes, I thank you. I failed to mention that.
And Pierre will be involved and will be in that group too, correct?
Yes, Mr. Johnson is actually a part of the general education work team. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be helpful if we had a list of who was on those or on those teams. That would be great. My last question is, you mentioned that you were going to have summer school for K3 Move On When Reading. I'd like to know what that looks like, and I'd like to know how many children you're going to be servicing for that.
Most definitely. Yep.
Thank you. Anybody else?
This is Dr. Diaz. I have a question. is there a work group or a team that's studying enrollment trends? I'm just curious to know, are we seeing, a steady trend of enrollment going into next year due to COVID, or is there a more of a decline?
I'm going to have to defer that question to someone else or get back to you, Dr. Diaz, if nobody is able to answer that question at this time.
This is Dr. Hidalgo. I don't, right now, at this moment, we haven't seen much change. That will definitely change as we move towards the end of the traditional school year and we begin enrollment. So what we started doing was knowing that we might not be able to fully operate our school sites in the manner we traditionally do, is we started installing drop boxes at the school sites where we will have enrollment packets for folks to complete and drop off in these lock boxes. And so there's a whole other, there's going to be mailings to remind folks that, enrollment is that we're enrolling students for next school year. In addition to that, any students that were open enrolled have or should receive a letter indicating they're welcome back for next school year. So there's a lot of little things going on right now to transition us into the next school year. And we've had to modify how we do that because of our inability to be at the school sites. In addition to that, we're moving away from our centralized phone calls. We're going to move back to the school site so there's more of a personal touch, and we're just awaiting the delivery of some additional cell phones to hand out to each school site so that if parents want to contact the school itself, they'll have someone to talk to. Everyone will be working collaboratively, and we know that there's some documents that we're going to have to be flexible. So in the traditional enrollment, there's documents that parents need to provide us to complete the enrollment process, such as a copy of a birth certificate or a bill to show where they live, immunization records. We know that that's not going to be possible at all times. So we are going to be very flexible and begin the enrollment process, get the information, make sure we get them into our schools, and then follow up with all those documents. So yes, we do have a plan in place, and our office managers have started meeting weekly with our MIS team, which supports the back end of the enrollment process on what we call Synergy, which is our student information system. So there's a lot of conversations about what this should look like.
Thank you. I know that that's a lot of work being put into it, but I definitely appreciate everything that you guys are doing to try and adapt during this time.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz.
Dr. Weeks, are there any other updates for COVID-19?
Just a couple of comments. I want to recognize the central enrollment team. We got a couple of guys, I think Troy and Vic, and I'm trying to think if anybody else was on that team, Dr. Hidalgo, to try and, Dr. McLaughlin, to try to modify what was into what will be, and that began before COVID. And then, so what we were able to do was expedite some of those pieces to be able to develop the kinds of systems that would be more friendly to families. But I am very concerned that we don't have the kind of data that we need to predict accurately what next year is going to look like. That's a huge variable for us and for the majority of the districts that I speak to, just because of where we are with parent choice, online versus on-ground decisions. So with that, my only comment would be I want to recognize that I'm going to call it the Back to School in the Fall Committee. They have a proper name than that. But that committee includes parents, because I do believe that at this time, nobody has an absolute best practice for getting back to school in the fall. And so this, to me, would seem to be the right time to develop a community solution for this, to get as many of the community members and parents involved as we possibly can, so that we can collaborate together to really clearly understand the needs of all the folks involved. And so the call to action then would be to you governing board members and to all of us to really reach out to the folks that we know and encourage them to be part of this process, to be part of this team. We absolutely positively need to hear their voices in what the next school year looks like. And with that, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Weeks. Are there community communications?
No community communications this morning.
Yeah, so I didn't need my phone. All right, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Dr. Elora Diaz. I make that motion.
And a second.
I will second it. This is Louisa Stark.
Are there comments or questions about the consent agenda? I'm not hearing any. So all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Okay, we're on to curriculum and instruction. That would be
Thank you,
Dr.
President Benjamin, governing board members, cabinet, community members listening in. We are very excited to bring this next board agenda item to you. We are asking for you to approve instructional resources for our students. We know that our students deserve the most up-to-date and high-quality resources, and we know that our teachers deserve the same in order to support student learning. Our curriculum audit calls for a timeline for reviewing the alignment, quality, and rigor of adopted resources and materials. And when we put that timeline and review cycle in place, we came to realize that our resources, our instructional resources, were out of date and were inadequate, and we needed new resources. So we're excited to bring that forward to you today. So this is a request for approval to purchase the following instructional materials using capital override funds and adopt the instructional resources in accordance with ARS 15-721A, which align to the Arizona Academic Standards. Study Sync, published by McGraw-Hill Education for 7-8 grade ELA. Ready Math with iReady, published by Curriculum Associates for K-8 Math. Social Studies Textbook, published by Discovery Education for 6th through 8th grade. Inspire, published by McGraw-Hill Education for kindergarten through 5th grade science. And Amplify Science, published by Amplify for 6th through 8th grade science. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Shelman Brown so she can provide you with information about the why, the what, and the how behind this request.
Thank you, Dr. McLaughlin, and good morning, board members, Madam President, Dr. Weeks, Cabinet, everyone. I'm really excited to be here to share this information with you. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. There might be a little bit of a lag as we trade off. Okay, it says I'm sharing the screen, so hopefully you're seeing the same things that I'm seeing. Perfect, thank you, Dr. McLaughlin. So I apologize in advance. This is a fairly detailed and long presentation, but I'll try and make sure that I'm as concise as can be, but it's really important information and an extensive process that we went through to bring these recommendations to you. I'm extremely proud of the work that went into it, my team, and also the teachers who were able to take part in the process and help us to identify the best resources for our students. So as part of our curriculum management plan reminds us, we are obligated to provide the right instructional tools to make sure that our teachers can do their jobs effectively. And so our curriculum management plan offers a definition of instructional resources, which is what we're looking to adopt. And again, essentially, those are the tools that we put into the hands of our students and our teachers in order to facilitate their learning. We're in the midst of a pandemic. It's the end of the year. There are lots of different moving pieces. And so an automatic question that would pop into anyone's mind is, why would we try and do all of this right now? And there are many reasons, but three of the most important. Number one, my always go to is what's good for kids. Our students deserve the very best each and every day, and these new resources are a way to provide that. We have an opportunity right now to make sure that when we start the next school year, our students have access to the highest quality materials across grade levels and across content areas. Also, we can't really afford to wait. Time is not on our side. We already had some significant instructional and learning gaps that we were looking to close, and then we had to shut down our traditional schools. As Dr. McLaughlin mentioned earlier, we attempted to meet the needs of our learners through packets and through our distance learning, and our teachers have done a wonderful job of completely changing gears at the last minute to meet the needs of students. But we also know that we're going to have the summer slide that always happens, plus the additional gaps that students may incur just because of having the traditional school year ended, almost an entire trimester early. And so we can't really afford to take time without having the best resources when we're trying to make up for gaps that already existed, plus those gaps that have been further extended. Additionally, we have students who are ready for that stretch. Students who need some extension and enrichment, and we need to have resources in place to support those learners as well. And finally, and something I'm excited about, is that we have the opportunity to redefine normal in our district. We have the opportunity to say, moving forward, what could and should education look like? Because literally every wall has now been taken down. And so I'm excited to work with our action team to come up with plans where we can take what we've learned about distance learning and blended learning through the pandemic, provide more structures, provide high quality resources, and really see how can we build the most personalized, blended, effective learning approach in the midst of a crisis. That way, no matter what happens in August, whether we're in buildings or in homes, we have the right materials, the right instructional framework, the right best practices in place so that whether we have to go in and out of buildings and home, we're able to navigate that seamlessly. That's the goal. So this school year, we know that the state and board require approval of those instructional materials, but that our curriculum audit wanted us to have some more concrete steps for how we go about doing that. Math and science, when we did a dig to try and figure out, well, what went into picking the resources we have right now, as best my team could locate, those resources were last adopted in 2006 and 2007. A lot has changed in science since 2006. A lot has changed in math since 2007. And so we felt that it was our professional obligation to at least take a look and see, do the resources that we have stand up to the test? Are they meeting our needs for standards? Or are there better, more current resources that can address the standards and meet our student needs? For social studies, we did not have any consistent resources across the district K-8. There were some textbooks here or there, some magazine subscriptions, but nothing consistent. For ELA, our teachers did have access to novels. Those novel sets that they had access to varied from site to site, and there was not consistency necessarily in what was happening across campuses or what the expectation was for novel study. And I heard repeatedly from teachers when I came on board that they were looking for some more structure to go along with that. And finally, we already know that we have great teachers in the district. We have data to indicate that. We know that our parents are sending us the very best kids they have every morning. What we need to do then is to say, okay, if we have the best teachers and we have the best kids, why is our proficiency data not quite where we need it to be? Let's try giving them the highest quality materials to work with and see if that can make a difference. Because if we have the best teachers, the best students, and the best resources, we've now eliminated a potential barrier to that achievement. I won't read the entire slide, but there's an article, The 4 Cornerstones of Professional Learning, put out by the Learning Forward group, which focuses on education and professional development. And they reviewed literature and looked at many studies and found essentially that the impact of having high quality resources matched or exceeded that of the standard growth of a teacher from first year to third year. Pretty much any other intervention, having the highest quality resources could make up for the difference between any other intervention and have a statistically significantly better outcome than even having sorry, I lost my place for just a moment. Having more effective teachers, providing better, I'm gonna leave it at that because I'm talking in circles. But I do want to point out with one of the complications when I'm looking at the research, some folks use curriculum and instructional resources interchangeably. And so when you see that on the slides, that was a quote from the study. What they were actually referring to when you go deeper was more instructional resources, not the curriculum. We're looking to align better resources with our new and improved curriculum as well. So essentially with that second bullet, they're saying having a better program it leads to statistically better outcomes for students than most other interventions. And that's something that we buy at once. And that's a gift that keeps on giving, because now we have that for years and years, whereas we might have something else that goes away in just a year. And so when we have teachers who have the right resources and then they invest time in really learning those resources and figuring out how to customize and personalize those, they can then transfer their learning and those resources into student success. And finally, from that article, something that I take to heart is that at a minimum, we should have a guarantee to all educators that we're going to outfit them with the right resources. If we need them to do the difficult work, we need to give them the right tools to do it. It should just be an expectation in our district that we provide the very best to our teachers, along with time to collaborate and really get to know the resources so that they can then figure out, how do I use those tools to best meet my students' needs? Our audit findings, as Dr. McLaughlin alluded to, highlighted a need for systems across the board. We needed to have a better way of looking at our resources, figuring out what's effective, what's not as effective. And right now there are no set times for when those reviews happen. And we didn't necessarily have a written plan in place for what are the concrete steps that have to happen on the pathway to determining which resources are the best. And so we're hoping that this process is the beginning of writing that gap that the audit found. The other thing that we know that the audit revealed is that we have a lot of different resources in use in buildings. Lots of no consistency with math. We had multiple math programs happening as a core, and then add to that core having multiple math programs, sometimes even within the same school. We also then had multiple interventions happening. And so when you have a system that has 50 different programs that change from year to year to year, it's difficult to impossible to determine which program is having the impact or the effect. And so we really needed to get back to a baseline, start from the same page so that then we can start doing those program evaluations and determine what programs are most effective in working with our students. So this is a step towards streamlining what's happening as far as instructional resources go so that we can better navigate those studies that we're hoping to do in the future to figure out what teachers need and what students need.
Dr. Brown, can we ask you questions throughout this?
Sure.
Benjamin. I have a question about this. You know, when the systems are overburdened with an excessive number of programs issue. What kind of process are you going to have to slough off to get rid of all these extraneous materials?
Great question. So with social studies, it's easy because there's nothing to get rid of other than some textbooks that are dusty in the back of the closet. We have worked with, thank you to Transportation and Plant Services. The warehouse has agreed to deliver boxes to our site so that they can pack up the older materials so that we can get those either recycled or sold depending on the value. With the digital resources, in order to spend the federal title dollars, those would need to go through Sherry Zeeb's office, which would, we work very closely together. And so that's something that before they were able to purchase something else to supplement the new things, they would need to talk to her and she would then talk to me. So there's at least a process where they would have to check in at sites so that we would at least know if anything else was going into buildings. And then my hope is that whatever we implement, because I now have a core C&I team of specialists, we're able to then identify for principals, what are some look fors and be more visible in buildings so that our presence alone, we can look and see, hey, are teachers using the resources? What is being used? And then have those conversations with principal leaders when we see that that there are things happening in buildings that aren't in line with district expectations.
It'll be interesting to watch because as a teacher, there are certain, I mean, I carried boxes of things around with me when I moved from classroom or school to school because I might need that.
Yeah.
And teachers are, collectively, connected to their stuff and they might need that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how willingly they give it up and how they go out to get new stuff. They will, because that's what teachers do. So that it's an interesting conundrum, and how you hold people accountable will be interesting to watch.
Well, I think it'll be a combination of things. One, making sure the principals know exactly what's expected and what they should look for. So there's that visibility piece for accountability. But I think the other piece is getting teachers excited about the new materials so that they're wanting to use the new stuff rather than staying with what's comfortable or familiar. Because we have to have them feel supported. If we have enough professional learning, if we're able to be responsive to their needs, if they feel comfortable with the new, then it may not be quite as painful. I know when I taught, I definitely was very attached to some of the things that I loved and that I thought worked really well for my students. And I imagine that that's where our teachers are as well. I know some are very excited, but not everyone will be as excited about the change. And so we'll just have to make sure we balance accountability with support.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Diaz. I have a quick question on your comment around support. And you may have said this, I had to put my son down for a nap, sorry. Are we having specific targeted PD to help teachers understand how to make the most of these resources?
Yes, and I'll get to that in a little bit more detail coming up, but absolutely it was a condition of any adoption that we have to have professional development support from the vendors, plus whatever we're able to do in-house throughout the entire life of the adoption, not just the initial, I call it drink from the fire hose training, where everyone sits in a room, learns the ins and outs of the programs, and then walks away, and then 2 weeks later realizes what their real questions are. So yes, there will be ongoing support in a variety of formats throughout the entire implementation.
And that's really great. I'm glad to hear that it'll be staggered and ongoing. And then just to kind of clarify my understanding here, you guys are developing a system to, one, track the effectiveness of these new resources and also measure how teachers are feeling about the resources?
Yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you so much.
No problem. So this was our first attempt at bringing a more concrete process to resource adoption. I'm sure over the years we'll refine and tweak it a bit, but it was fairly robust for our first go round. I found it interesting that in Arizona, because we're in an elementary school district, we are not bound by the same RFP rules and guidelines that I expected to have to follow. We have a whole lot more flexibility in how we could go about it, including just saying, hey, I really like this publisher, so let's go with this one. To me, that's professionally irresponsible. And I think teachers would feel very frustrated if that's the direction we went. And so we opted to go as close to a traditional RFP process as possible, even though we were not required to. If you haven't been part of that, it's an extremely rigorous process that begins with developing a statement of work. We sent that or before we even developed the statement of work, my team of content area specialists sent out flyers, invited teachers to come together to tell us what they thought made for best instruction in their particular content area, and what they needed most in a resource. And professional learning was one of those things that came up in every content area conversation. Teachers were very clear. It doesn't matter what you buy. If you're not going to give me the right training, then it doesn't matter. And so we offered those meetings for every content area. My specialist then took the feedback from those meetings, plus their own research and expertise, and developed a statement of work. In the board packet, I believe it's page 44, was a sample of one of the invitations that went out to teachers. We sent those types of invitations out anytime we had a next step in the process to invite anyone who wanted to be part of the conversation to come and share their ideas. And then page 45 in the board packet has a sample statement of work. That's the statement of work that was sent out for the math resource, but it's identical other than changing up what some of the specifics we're looking for to what went out for every other content area. And that included things such as professional development. Can they provide that? How is this going to be applicable across diverse populations? What's their research base? Do they have any efficacy studies? How do they think they can meet the needs of our diverse learners? How are we going to support our EL students? All of those in, off the top of my head, I'm going to say probably about an almost 10-page, 7 to 10-page document went to every vendor on the state's approved procurement list. So our purchasing department was kind enough to get us that list. So I sent a mass email to every vendor on the list, and any company in the country who thought they could meet our needs was then invited to submit a response and some sample materials. We received responses from over 50 vendors, and we stopped counting at about 180 boxes of materials. That's when we just said, okay, we're going to roll with it. And if you haven't been part of an RFP process, the response is anywhere from 70 to, I think our largest was 600 pages, where the publisher outlines how they think they can meet our needs in accordance with what we said we needed. And so my specialist had to go through every single page of every vendor response and that's before they even look at the sample materials and those boxes. And they scored each program on most of the rubrics were, I think we were at about 7 pages. And on page 52 of your board packet, you have a copy of that rubric that was aligned to the statement of work. So they went through that. It took hours. I can't even tell you exactly how many hours that was. We also had our EL specialist look at all of the resources. Once we had it narrowed down a bit to the ones we were considering, we talked to our special education team. And so we really tried to make sure that we were considering the whole package before deciding what to bring before teachers to say, hey, give us some more input. So the specialist narrowed the field down to the top 2 most competitive programs in each content area. And those are the vendors who were invited to present to our teachers. Those top 2 vendors, we sent out invitations again, and any teacher who wanted to come and see what the programs were about, ask questions, were invited to do so, and then to give us feedback forms for each of those vendors. After that, before we moved to a next step, we knew that not all teachers were able to come out to the in-person presentations. And so we asked the vendors for demo codes for online access. That way teachers who needed to preview in the privacy of their own homes or at a time that was more convenient for them could also do a quick peek around and watch some videos and get a feel for it and submit an online feedback form as well. And so my team reviewed all of the feedback, shared that feedback with me. We conducted a whole nother set of reference checks because we were constantly checking in with other districts to find out, how's this working for you? What do you like about it? What do we need to know before implementation? And then based on the feedback we received from teachers, feedback I received from my specialists, and conversations with other districts who have implemented various programs, they brought those recommendations to me, and then I'm making the final recommendation for the resources that Dr. McLaughlin listed. At this time, we are not prepared to move forward with a 4-5 social studies recommendation as we had initially hoped at the beginning of the year. We didn't feel like we had enough information or teacher input. And so we're going to pause on that one and wait until the next school year. But for middle school social studies, we felt much more comfortable with the decision. And so at this time we are, after that, sorry, one other step had to happen. We try and make sure that the public knows that things are happening and that they have the opportunity to offer their voice as well. And so initially we had the in-person, someone could come in and pick up a copy and look through any of the resources they wanted to. And then the pandemic hit, but thankfully we have these robust digital components. And so we were able to transfer our in-person viewing to an online version. And so we were able to post that to the website on the front page and put an online feedback form for that. And my team checked in every week or so to see if there was any new feedback or anything else that we needed to consider prior to making this recommendation. So with all of that feedback as well, that's when we felt comfortable enough to move forward to today's meeting to request that the board approve these resources. So just as a visual of what we were working with, if you happen to have stopped by our office or our instructional suite and it looked like we were moving, that's because this is what our office has looked like since about November, December, January timeframe. And we can't thank the teachers enough, those who were able to come after a long day on the job and come give us feedback. But we were really excited about the different groups who came to give us feedback. So we had, for example, you'll see in the corner, our science facilitator, Susan Brown, but her daughter is actually a Phoenix 1 student. And so she gave me personally some thoughts on what she liked about the science programs. But we had kindergarten teachers, special education teachers, public shout out to the Herd principal who literally attended every single vendor presentation for every content area. It was incredible. We had middle school teachers, elementary teachers, special education teachers, a little bit of everyone. And so we were really pleased with the range of voices that we were able to hear throughout this process. So this is just the resources that we are recommending: StudySync, ReadyMath with iReady, Amplify, Inspire, and the tech book. Every resource that we're recommending has high external ratings. None of it is just, we liked it. They all have comprehensive digital solutions. That's especially important right now because we have no idea what next year is going to look like. And so we needed to make sure that our students would have access, again, for that seamless transition in or out. Not to mention, even if we are in buildings next year, that does not mean that learning should still stop at the time that the bell ends. We now know that learning can happen for our kids because we've worked out some of these tech access issues, so we can take advantage of that. They all have embedded differentiation opportunities and explicit supports for EL. That was a big non-negotiable for us, and our EL facilitator has given each of the final recommendations a much more thorough review to make sure that they really are including some supports to help all of our learners. And our special education team is excited as well about the opportunities to differentiate within these resources to better meet those needs. And they all interface with Google Classroom. So whether it's, again, in school or at home, each of these programs can already be linked to the Google Classrooms that our teachers have already set up. So it won't be one more thing that teachers have to learn to set up if they wanted to assign things to students digitally, because they already work with what we've just implemented with our distance learning.
Dr. Brown, this is Susan Benjamin. So are there any local districts who are using any of these?
Yes. Off the top of my head, I'll say I know Kyrene is using iReady and ReadyMath. I'm gonna say Madison. Yes, Madison has Inspire. Maricopa has StudySync. Those are the ones I remember off the top of my head, but we talked about
yeah, I just wanted to know if you'd had some contact with them, I'm assuming, or some of them.
Yes, and some of them also align with Phoenix Union programs for that vertical piece as well.
Okay,
So Discovery Education is the middle school social studies resource. They call it a tech book because it is all digital, but there's the option to download and customize anything, and it could be printed if that's the direction that we thought we needed to go. But what appeals to the teachers about that is how interactive it is online. The teachers were excited about the virtual field trips and the opportunity to have enough of a solid core that they had a foundation, but not have something so scripted that experienced teachers don't have any flexibility. They were also excited about the assessment options because we need some formative and summative assessment options for our social studies folks. And so they're excited to be able to have the opportunity to progress monitor. And they liked the differentiated supports available within the textbook. We think our parents are going to be accessible or are going to be excited because the programs are accessible online on any device. So tablet, phone, computer, whatever the kiddo happens to have. It can translate using Google Text. And so if you had parents who wanted to see what their kids were doing or looking at or reading, then if the home language is not English, they could toggle on and be able to read and see what it is that their students are learning. Everything, of course, is age appropriate and vetted by Discovery Education. And the resource never ends because they're constantly adding to this program. We will always have the most current version. Because it's virtual, we're not limited to just what we're able to buy next year. We have access to the entire library as it expands.
Dr. Brown, this is Susan Benjamin again. I have another question about the parent piece. Are you going to have expectations that the schools have some, like parent meetings in the afternoon, evening, so that parents can become familiar with this and like some training?
I'm not sure exactly what it would look like and whether it would have to be that the schools figured it out versus us working with the vendors to provide that training, but hosting it at sites. I do think that the more we can get the parents the help guides like we did with the virtual learning where we had here's how you log into Google Classroom, here's what you can see as a parent. I think having those sorts of videos and training opportunities needs to happen. And I think I'll own that responsibility as my team and support principals with that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that will happen across all content areas.
This is Dr. Diaz. I have a question. I know that this is for 6-8. My larger question is, does every grade level at this point have a standardized resource, or are we limited to what we're approving right now?
For social studies specifically, or in general?
Just across all contents, including social studies.
No, there is not consistency. The only thing that I feel comfortable saying is consistent district-wide is benchmark K6 that was recently adopted, and we're in the beginning of that multi-year contract. With math, we have at least 2 different core programs in use, sometimes both programs within the same school. With social studies, there is no official approved resource that we've been able to locate. At best, we've been able to see some textbooks from the 90s.
But this would be...
So this would be providing that consistency.
So once we approve, or should we approve these resources today, would this mean that we have consistency across the district in terms of content and across grade levels, or are there still some gaps?
There would still be a gap right now for social studies. K5, we weren't prepared to make that recommendation based on what we had access to. And publishers are still working on better aligning the Arizona standards. And so that one we wanted to take a little bit more time. We have an idea, but for K8 math, we would be vertically and horizontally aligned. For K6 ELA, we already have a consistent resource. So this would add that consistent resource for 7th and 8th grade. And the resource that we're looking at is actually the one that's unofficially, if you ask school districts who are using benchmark what they use for middle school, because there's no benchmark 7-8 yet. This is the resource that most of those schools end up using for their middle school. So there's some consistency there. For science, we would have consistency most likely for K8 ultimately, but for next school year, we're not implementing K3 yet, because we don't want to overburden our K3 teachers with both the math piece and the science piece, while many of them are coming on board with the 95% group work, but ultimately it would be aligned as well.
That's great. And then I did have one other question. You mentioned that this specific resource is flexible enough to allow teachers to kind of put their own personality to the lessons. I'm wondering though, does this resource and the other resources we have come with more or less a prescribed lesson plan for our teachers who are new to the field or who are still developing in terms of their effectiveness?
Absolutely. Every resource offers a core pathway at a minimum, especially, we're going to have a brand new teacher come into a classroom who needs much more guidance. And so every resource would have those basic lesson plans, including, and if you have struggling learners, if you have ELs, here's how you might support them. If you have this other need, all of those things are built into the core version of each of these. But then there's also enough wiggle room that if you have a teacher who says, but my kid needs this other thing instead, there's a way to still add that piece in.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Anytime. So Study Sync is the ELA piece that would partner with the benchmark piece, 7th and 8th grade. Teachers are very excited about this piece. I was excited that to get a teacher endorsement, and I think I missed those on a couple of other slides, but an Edison teacher is really, really excited about Study Sync and excited to be a partner with us in the implementation. I received the direct quote about how much he strongly times a million likes Study Sync because of that inclusive process and the amazing text available within that. The way Study Sync is set up, it allows for flexible grouping and would make differentiating easier for students. It has the audio support that teachers might need and that some of our students need as part of their IEPs. There's a blast that's customizable. So again, you can either use things as is, or you can tailor them because you're a teacher who already knows what they're doing a little bit more. There are checks for understanding throughout each of the lessons. Scaffolding and differentiation is included in all of those lessons. Teachers thought the videos were engaging because they have videos where the students are engaging in academic conversation. So it's kids talking to kids in academic ways rather than it always just being adults telling kids how they should speak. The writing aligns to the AZM2 expectations, and teachers think that a new teacher could use this resource easily and an experienced teacher could customize. So kind of what you were asking about, Dr. Diaz, is something that was explicitly called out as a perk of the Study Sync program. Students and parents will likely love that it's easy to navigate and the offline access options. We know that some of our students may have access at one parent's house, and then when they go to the next parent's house, they may not. The way Study Sync is set up, as long as I'm connected to the internet at the time I download the assignment, if I'm on my phone, even after I leave school or McDonald's or wherever I'm at, I can still access all of that content because it downloaded. So whether I'm on my phone, my tablet, whatever device I have, and then I can still submit, I can still conduct my work create my work. And then once I'm connected to the Wi-Fi again, it will automatically upload. So whenever I get back to school, that's when my assignment would upload. So they don't have to have uninterrupted internet access in order to still engage in the online pieces, but there's print support as well for those who need it. It's an intentionally diverse library. And so I think we have many opportunities for students to actually see themselves in the text. And that's really important to us, especially in our ELA classes. And the sync blasts, which are kind of like little Twitter feeds, except in a much more controlled setting. Like there's a quick question and then they respond to the question. That allows them to respond to those current events, but through a very safe and consistent channel. And so I think students and parents will both appreciate being able to safely engage in those sorts of conversations. And as a district, we're excited to buy once and have the latest every time because they update their library every single month. And so we get access to every new text that they put in. Their authors, their program contributing authors, the lineup is unmatched. Dr. Doug Fisher and Catlin Tucker are both experts on close reading and complex text and blended learning. And they are both.
Can I ask you about close reading? Have you all done any training? I have some recall some years ago before you were here that there was some training on close reading, but I don't know if it's continued or not because it's an excellent way to teach reading. So there's a support.
I can't speak to what's happened in the past, and I'm not certain any has happened this year. I'm hoping that if we're able to bring an ELA specialist on board, that can be a clear focus, because I agree with you. I've seen the benefits of close reading in ELA classrooms. And so if it's not already something that we have available, it's something that I anticipate us being able to focus on as one of the strategies. I know it's built into the benchmark work as an expectation for benchmark case 6. And so I think that's something that would continue, and we could do some explicit PD around it.
That'd be great. Yes, thank you.
And this isn't one of those programs where the author signs his name on it and then walks away, but doesn't really do anything. This is a program that Doug Fisher actually uses in his classrooms that he teaches. And I believe the same is true of Catelyn Tucker. She wrote Blended. And so I think the opportunities for our teachers to learn to teach in a blended environment will benefit us, again, whether we're on ground or in homes, because that to me, that's how we should be doing things anyway. All learning should not have to happen in a traditional classroom setting. And then finally, I'll just highlight that the digital supports for this program are intentional. Many times there's a program that exists, we already had an anthology, and then you add on a digital piece as an afterthought because that's what's trending. But StudySync is the merging of 2 different companies. StudySync started out as a completely digital program written by a former English teacher turned computer programmer whose daughters hated reading, and it was breaking his heart. So he said, I'm gonna build something that makes my kids want to read, because he was an English person. And so it started off a smaller company, completely digital, and then they partnered with McGraw-Hill, one of the largest publishing companies. And so the merging of the 2 has resulted in this resource that has strong print and digital resources. Inspire, and I'll try and move a little bit more quickly because I know you've seen the presentation earlier as well. Inspire is also by McGraw-Hill. And so a lot of the same things that we liked as far as the digital access, teachers are excited about the claim, evidence, reasoning for the writing piece, because we know that literacy needs to happen across disciplines. They like the videos that would engage students, and that they use phenomenon-based instruction. The parents and students, and probably also teachers, I think a key highlight is that the experiments that happen also happen on video. And so the teachers get a lot of support because they see what the experiment is supposed to look like. We ask a lot of our early grade teachers. Teaching 4 or 5 different content areas in a single day and having to plan for each, we're expecting them to have to be experts in every single content area. And I think this gives teachers some flexibility to say, I don't know what this would look like at the end. I can watch this video before I even teach it and know what to expect it to look like, rather than seeing what it looks like for the first time when my kids do it. But if we either had to close down, or if a student missed a day of school, they could watch a video and still have seen the experiment happen, so that when they return to school, they haven't missed out on that learning. Again, as a district, we're excited about many of the same things as we were excited about with the other resources, that differentiation opportunity, the digital and print materials, that for both social studies and science, things are designed with the 5E instructional model in mind. And the lesson plans are, again, explicit and directive for teachers, but leave some room for teachers to be able to know their kids, so to speak. Amplify Science. The quote that, or it's more a paraphrase that I liked from teachers that was pointed out to me, is that it feels like science done in a project-based teaching style. That will probably be a bit more engaging for our students than feeling like they're being talked at the entire time. It's also discussion-based, so the students get to talk to each other rather than always only listening to the teacher talk. And the instructions, teachers thought the instructions were extremely user-friendly. Just as I mentioned with the science piece, being able to watch a video, Amplify has a lot of step-by-step explicit instructions for teachers so that they know exactly how to do things if they want to do them, rather than them having to read between the lines or already have certain information or background or expectations. They can see right away, these are the tools that I would need, here's how much time it should take, and then they can make informed choices. The students and parents, I think, will be really excited to see their students reading, writing, and thinking like scientists and engineers. That's what disciplinary literacy is all about, is putting students in that role. And I think that parents will appreciate that, as well as the technological pieces of this, again, unmatched, engaging, eye-catching, but easy to use. As a district, we're excited that the 3 dimensions of science are interwoven throughout, which we have to align to the new state standards. And so that's going to help us to be able to do that. Do, talk, read, write, visualize. That is an important approach to how we instruct with science. And so this is rooted in that very respected model. And again, the assessment system, across the board, teachers have asked for assessment options. And so the option to have a comprehensive assessment system in place for all of these resources is appealing to our teachers and to us. And then finally, the big one is the K-8 math.
Can I ask one question before you start math? This is Susan Benjamin. You've been using FOSS Science, hands-on learning.
Yes.
What's going to happen to that?
So for now, with K3, until we make that transition, we'll still have those FOSS kits in place. And then we're collecting back the 4th through 8th grade kits, and we're going to see if they're what's still usable, so that we can maybe repurpose those into some STEM-based or project-based science kits. So our science specialist is already thinking now about what's in the kits and how can we turn those into some STEM project resources that we could put back into schools.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So Ready Math and iReady is truly the best resource money can buy. Teachers are a little concerned. They think the learning curve is going to be steep for both teachers and for students because of the rigor of the program. It uses the try, discuss, connect routine, and we're looking at intentional and purposeful math talk. We know that when students are talking about things and can explain it, they're more likely to be learning it. And this program is rooted in, no, let's talk it through, let's figure it out. And teachers are excited that it can be so individualized, because no matter where you're at, whether you're needing to catch up or whether you're needing that extension, this program allows for that independent and individual growth as needed.
Dr. Brown, could I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Okay, this is Lene Almy. And so my question is around the teacher concern about rigor of the program. A few years back when I was a math interventionist, I worked with implementing a new rigorous math program, and it was so difficult for teachers that they often just gave up. So I was curious if you had an idea on like how you're planning to scaffold for those students that are struggling with rigor, or if there are supplemental resources. It sounds like maybe the program has some within it if it's able to be individualized. But I was curious if you could speak to that piece a little bit, just to make sure it doesn't get so overwhelming for teachers and students that it kind of disappears.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's a very valid concern, and our students, our data tells us that we've got some gaps across the majority of our students that we're going to need to fill. That's why you can buy Ready Math as a standalone program, and that's the core piece, but we're specifically adopting Ready Math with iReady. The iReady component is the intervention diagnostic piece that we can use, because we also don't have a math diagnostic in the district. So when we try and do MTSS, we don't have anything to pinpoint where is the student struggling. So when you use those in tandem, our expectation, if adopted, is that students would get access to the iReady piece at least 20 to 30 minutes per day, already just built into the math block. And that's what's going to do a diagnostic and then provide adaptive instruction to help fill those gaps for our students, to help them catch up, while also generating reports for teachers so that they can see what are those skills that our students are missing, so that they can also help to target that. And I think we have to extend a lot of grace to our teachers in the first year, and a lot of support in reminding them that we're going to have some frustration points, but we're going to focus more on, are we growing as we're working to fill it in, rather than are we exactly where we need to be right now. The problem with not using something that's at grade level, and it's rigorous essentially because it's actually at grade level and at the level of rigor called for by the standards, which means that it's more in line with what the students are going to see on AZM2. And so if they're not able to do it in the core program, then we shouldn't be surprised when we see our data. And in fact, the studies on iReady in particular for their math have a very high correlation and predictive quality as far as AZM2. I think they studied across 5 different districts in the urban districts in the state of Arizona, and had somewhere around, I'll say an average of 40% more growth out of students who used iReady each week. Same results in Colorado on their state tests, same results in Florida on their state tests. Those are the big 3 states that I looked at, but it's consistent across every state that the students are getting more growth. And I think if we're celebrating their growth through the diagnostic piece and we have wins, then the students are less likely to get frustrated by what they're not able to do yet, because they're also seeing what they're doing right. Without that diagnostic piece, it does feel like failure, 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 failure over and over again, because we don't know where that missing piece is. And so the students don't have an opportunity to have done something successfully.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I am glad to see us looking at a more rigorous math program, because we know we have a lot of work to do there. Thank you.
And I think our teachers are up for the challenge. I think as long as we support them, they can absolutely handle it. We just have to make sure we remind them that they're doing a great job when they aren't seeing the results in the first week. We think students and parents will love the math talk component, that the lessons take 4 or 5 days to complete. So it's not that you have to have mastered something the first time you see it. They actually have time to process, explore, and really understand the skill before we consider it mastered. And then also these weekly family letters, these are things that are available in English and Spanish and can be auto-generated. And so teachers could reach out to families and update them and communicate with them on what their students are learning without it having to be something else that teachers had to create. So the opportunity to extend communication to families while not overburdening our teachers with having to draft it themselves, rather than being able to customize it a little bit if needed, I think will be something that the parents appreciate. It's thinking about letting me go. And then finally, with this one, I will say that we're most excited about the assessments and diagnostic potential of iReady. The ability to really know what is it that our students need and to pinpoint that support in an adaptive and personalizable way is just, I can't speak to just how valuable that's going to be in improving our students' math growth. Our teachers will have real-time data on a regular basis that they can use to then drive their instruction. And many of the resources are pre-made. They already have PowerPoints and quizzes that could be pushed out, things that are pre-made so teachers can push things out to different small groups as needed, but everything is also customizable. So again, if you have a teacher who says, this is perfect except for this one piece, then instead of them having to build it themselves or go to Teachers Pay Teachers, they can just log on, change that one piece that didn't quite work, and then still move on with their day. So just to recap, because that was a whole lot of information, what we're explicitly looking at for next year is to implement a new resource across the board, K-8 math, 7th and 8th grade ELA, social studies middle school, and science 4th through 8th grade. We're doing this.
Dr. Brown, I have a question back on, as a district, we're excited. And it says the assessment options and detailed reports and iReady allow teacher to use meaningful real-time data to drive their daily instruction. Who's going to teach the teachers how to use those reports?
I am so glad you asked that question. That reminds me of something else that I had a note to myself to mention. One of the conditions that the publisher has before they will even allow you to buy iReady is that you have to purchase it as with a PD package as part of it. And not just a one-day thing. I think we're looking at right now an average of 30 days per year of on-site support, of tailored support, of webinars, and they offer options for teaching teachers how to read the reports and what are you seeing when you see this data, and then if you see this, then what do you do with that information? But they also offer training for administrators as well, and all of the programs will offer administrator support so that the administrators can then also become better at knowing what to ask teachers and what to look for and how to guide their teachers in what they should be looking at.
So will you use both administrators, both principals and the assessment department to, like when you have early, on Wednesdays when the kids go home early, and that's a perfect time for that to be an ongoing PD situation. Will you use both assessment staff and principals?
So I'll have to talk to Dr. McLaughlin for the final okay for when and how it can happen. But yes, I think principals as well as any assessment staff plus my team should all be comfortable speaking to and about how these assessments can influence our learning.
Thank you.
Very excited. I can't believe I left out. I had a note to myself and everything about that PD component that's a requirement. So we're looking at so many resources at one time because our achievement data and our audit indicate that we have to make some significant changes and updates to the quality of resources that we have available. If we want to actually do program evaluation, as the audit also said we should do, we have to have clean data. And so that means we need to have all high quality programs, and they need to be consistent so that we can then truly identify what is it that we need to work on. Is it that we need to change a resource? Is it that we need to change an instructional practice? We can't know that until we have clean data. So we need to just go ahead and have that clean data. New standards have happened since 2006, and not all of our purchases over the last, since that time, have reflected those new standards. And so if we push this off, then we're continuing to ask teachers to teach new standards with materials that were not designed to meet the needs of those new standards. And finally, if we do all of this now, even though it feels like a lot, we're then in a better position to start having it staggered so that we're not having to adopt 4 content areas every single time that we do those adoptions. And so that way we can phase them out or review every few years for content areas instead of everyone at once. We did look to see where there might be some overlap for our teachers. And so our K through 3rd grade teachers should only have to learn how to navigate the new math resources. With our 7th and 8th grade and most of our 6th grade, the teachers are fully departmentalized. And so if they only teach one content area, the overwhelming majority would only have to learn one program. The place where we see there might be some potential overlap is with our 4th and 5th grade non-departmentalized teachers. They might have to be, or they might be learning both math and science. And so we're already anticipating that for those who are not departmentalized, that we're going to need to prioritize our support and make sure that we're constantly checking in to give them the training and making sure that if we're sending folks out to do demo lessons, that sort of thing, that we're really targeting them specifically because they might have more than one training. We'll have to be also very aware of if we had a single day of PD, then recognizing that that means that teachers might be having to pick which day to go to. And so we have to be mindful of that in our scheduling to make sure that we're not setting teachers up to only be able to learn one program at a time. And so we'll keep a watchful eye on those 4th and 5th grade teachers who are not departmentalized.
I have a quick question. This goes back a few slides. When you were this is Dr. Diaz, by the way, when you were talking about assessments, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as though the programs and the curriculum that we have, they each have formative assessments across the different contents. So if this is correct, do we still need to be testing with Galileo if we have a common formative assessment across the district? It just seems like that would be very redundant, and I'm just wondering how Galileo aligns with our new resources and new way of learning.
So with the Galileo assessments, right now, the way they're set up is kind of mandated. We're tied to the McKeesa grant. And so we would still have to use that for this next school year. But I think that moving forward beyond that, it would be a conversation that we would have with the assessment team, with cabinet, with the board, and see which assessments are still most appropriate and whether or not we were double dipping or over testing if we use them more, or if there's opportunities to swap out.
Okay, that's good to hear. I think it would be, kind of being proactive if, I mean, we could even get this in a board update, and it doesn't have to be now, it can be whenever you have some time. I'd like to know, based on the resources we have, where we do have formative assessments that are consistent across grade levels and across schools in the district, where that could replace a Galileo, for example. So maybe that is not appropriate to share at this point, but at some time in the future, I'd like to see that.
So just so that I'm clear on what you're asking, you're asking us to essentially look at our comprehensive assessment program and see, are there places where we could use a test from one of these new resources instead of something that's already in existence, so that we're not doing the same thing twice?
Right, yeah. Thank you.
I will work with Dr. McLaughlin on that. So the professional learning, just as a reminder, I spoke a little bit about this at the beginning, is that it will be ongoing throughout the entire life of however long we have the program, because even though our retention rates are awesome, there's always going to be a new teacher. So, the baseline training has to happen anyway, but we're looking at going deeper than that, so that once teachers feel like they've mastered one thing, they can move on to something else that they're more passionate about. Someone might really love the assessment components and want to learn how to create their own rather than the ready-made. And so we might be able to offer webinars for that sort of thing. We're looking at online, in-person, if you're allowed to do that. We don't know when the social distancing guidelines are going to change, things happening directly at the sites, synchronous and asynchronous learning options, because we know all of our teachers learn differently, just as our students do. And some teachers are fine with watching the Getting Started 6-hour webinar training on their own, and other people have to see a person talking to them live or in front of them. And we're hoping to begin as soon as this summer. We know we have some go-getter teachers who would rather play around in the resource in the summer rather than feeling surprised in August. Other teachers are going to say, nope, let me have my summer. It's been a while. It's been a year. I need a break. And so then we'd be prepared to support them as well. We would have the heaviest emphasis on K-8 math, because there are so many teachers who are going to be impacted by it that I think that's where a lot of principals will have questions, but that does not mean the other content areas will not be supported. All of the content areas will receive support with their new resources. And then I'm also really excited about a partnership. Thank you, President-elects Jay and Aaron, because we were able to talk about having a partnership to have, I'm calling it sort of the pulse of the teachers. An implementation is only as effective as the people we ask to do the work. And so I can build PD all day, but if it's not what teachers need, then it was a waste of my time and theirs. And so I'm excited that PECTA is willing to work with me throughout this implementation process, so that we can better target the needs of the students or of the teachers, so that then they can meet the needs of the students. Money, can we afford it, is a big question. And the answer is yes. Thank you to the voters of our community, because that means we have dedicated capital override funds that can specifically be used for purchasing instructional resources. These are already designated dollars. They have to be used for instructional resources anyway. It's not something we could have spent in some other way, but it does allow us to be able to provide the best of the best as far as resources go. And then we'll stagger our contract lengths a bit. That way we can, one, afford more upfront, but then two, that way we're not, if we had a 6-year contract right off the bat with every single vendor, then we're in the exact same position again 5 years from now, looking to see, is that what we're going to continue with every content area? So we're going to stagger the implementation a bit so that we can establish a cycle where we're only looking at 1 or 2 content areas per year, and then we're ready to review again.
Dr. Brown, this is Susan Benjamin again. My question surrounds, there's got to be, I'm sure you have a plan for this, a plan that sits beside all of this for computers for kids. And so, because this is going to be, kids are going to rely on their laptops. And I when we need new ones and all of that. So there's going to be some kind of a cycle that sits next to this, so that those Chromebooks and everything are recycled and new purchases are made. Could you speak to that?
So to that end, yes, I'm so grateful that this pandemic has also led to a much stronger relationship with the MIS team. Thank you, Troy. And so as we are looking at adopting new resources throughout the years, we'll also make sure that we're working closely with MIS to make sure that if that requires an update, then we're making sure that that we have the right equipment to be able to support whatever the new resources. All of these resources are web-based as well. And so the resources that we already have available in schools for now are fine. And as long as the programs stay web-based, MIS should be able to update computers just on a normal rotation without needing to do anything special to accommodate the resources.
Great, thank you.
I just want to say, this is Dr. Diaz. I love everything that you've been saying. This is just, it makes me so happy to hear that our kids are going to have access to these amazing resources. And it sounds like it really gets to that whole equity piece here. So I'm excited to see the outcomes. But I love this slide because it shows that you all are being proactive and very thorough in ensuring that our kids are constantly getting the best resources out there. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly why I'm here. Only the best for our kids. So this is, right now it's the target for what future review cycles would look like. I reserve the right to modify a little bit if needed, but the goal is to stagger the contracts in a way that we're only looking at new resources. And it doesn't mean that we'll buy something new each time, as much as it's more of are we at least going to look and see, is this still meeting our needs? Usually every several years, the publishers would have also updated their resource. So we might find that in year 5, we still love the program we have, but we want the latest iteration of it, or we want to keep going because they've constantly updated and we have access. So it doesn't mean we always have to approve something new, but it does mean that we will at least check to make sure it's working, which then also establishes a timeline for how frequently we should be doing formal program evaluations, because we can't make any recommendations if we haven't done the formal program evaluations throughout the years leading up to these review years. So the goal is to get us on a more consistent review cycle. And then my final thought for this very, very long presentation is that we have tried our best to design an extensive and rigorous and collaborative and transparent process. We believe we have high quality resources across all content areas up for approval. This gives us a chance to really have some established cycles for those evaluations and adoptions. And no matter what, our professional learning is going to be nonstop and tailored to meet the needs of what our teachers are saying. So with that, I'll open it up to even more questions because I'm excited and can talk about this all day.
This is Lene Almy. I had just one very basic question you might have already covered. I'm so sorry. Could you just go through which of these programs are digital only, print only, both?
The only one that is technically digital only is the Discovery Education Tech Book for Social Studies. And they do offer a print version of the workbook, but and you can download anything and print pieces as you choose to. So we have full copyright permissions because everything is downloadable and customizable. Everything else is fully digital as well as has workbooks. But when you have something like a Study Sync, for example, you can buy the print core workbooks, which we would have copies of the print available to sites because sometimes you don't want to be on a computer. But with the limitation being that the print copies are of the core units. And if you have a teacher who wanted to tweak something or modify it, those customizations would be available only digitally unless they printed it. But everything has a print option or it already includes a print workbook.
Okay, and so as far as like year-to-year costs, which ones of those would have those like consumable resources that would have to be replaced?
The consumable costs are already included in the in the proposal.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Dr. Brown, oops. President Benjamin, did you have a question before I recommend action?
Go ahead. No, I don't. I was going to ask you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Brown, yes, this was an extremely extensive, robust, inclusive, collaborative process, and we appreciate you leading that. We appreciate your attention to detail because our teachers' instruction will benefit and our students, therefore, will learn. And that's the bottom line. So thank you very much for your leadership. President Benjamin, governing board members, administration recommends that the governing board approve to purchase the following instructional materials using capital override funds and adopt the instructional resources in accordance with ARS 15721A, which align to the Arizona academic standards. Study Sync, published by McGraw-Hill Education for 7th and 8th grade ELA. Ready Math with iReady, published by Curriculum Associates for K-8 Math. Social Studies Textbook, published by Discovery Education for 6th through 8th grade. Inspire, published by McGraw-Hill Education for kindergarten through 5th grade science. Amplify Science, published by Amplify for 6th through 8th grade science.
Thank you, Dr. McLaughlin. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved. This is Lene Almy.
Could I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Almy. Could I have a second?
I second.
This is Carmen. I'll second.
I heard Dr. Stark and Dr. Trujillo, who would like to make that second.
Dr. Trujillo, you go ahead.
Trujillo. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other comments from the board? Okay, all in favor? Oh, is there a comment?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say I didn't have any. My apologies.
Okay, all right, okay. I just want to make sure. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank
to our
you.
teachers and to our children.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you for all your work. Okay. I guess we're on to Dr. Hidalgo and a request for new job descriptions.
Sorry, it took me a while to unmute. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and good to see you. This morning, it's still morning, I'd like to bring forward a request from an administration to approve 2 new job descriptions as presented. As we spoke about briefly earlier this morning, enrollment is a high priority for the district, and we want to be able to place a more intentional focus on how we deal with enrollment as a school district. And so we've worked collaboratively with the curriculum and instruction, MIS team to come up with a plan, and HR to come up with a plan that we feel would address the needs of the district moving forward. And so Mr. Troy Harris has a PowerPoint presentation he'd like to share to explain a little bit more of what our plans are to strengthen our enrollment process here in the district. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Troy Harris.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board, cabinet, Dr. Weeks again. Wow, I can't believe I have to go after Dr. Brown. That was awesome, Shulman. But I'll do my best. I'm pretty excited to talk to you guys about this right now. This has been a project, and I'm gonna share my screen first before I go much further. Okay, hopefully you see that. So I'm pretty excited about this. This has been a project that has been talked about for quite a while, worked on for quite a bit, and we'll get to some of the procedures that went into that. But I'd like to start off by saying, of course, we need to drive enrollment to our district. I think we all know that. I've heard the board mention that several times. And as I mentioned earlier, Sarah Bresnahan always talks about, or has been talking about with his internet access project, that we're doing it one family at a time. And so we're taking that same approach to this enrollment project, that we're really driving enrollment one family at a time. This needs to be done through awesome customer service and really this deep passion to help parents find the best school for their children. We also want to simplify the enrollment process, especially during these times. It's, we want to make it as easy as possible for parents to know that they can get their children enrolled, that they're going to have a school for next year, especially in these uncertain times. So I think it really became important that we move quickly on this piece, so that we have something in place for this summer for enrollment. We want to ensure that all student enrollment and demographic information is highly accurate. That's also something that has become more and more important in this crisis. Is we're just getting lots of requests for different types of demographic data and analytics for data. That it's just becoming important that demographic data for students is really highly accurate, both for analytical purposes. And as I always say, that's we get funding based on our enrollment numbers that get uploaded to the state. So to receive the maximum possible state funding, that data has to be highly accurate. And then finally, our school staff. We want to be able to give them the needed time to be able to focus on providing excellent customer service in all they do in running their schools with their community members, family, and staff and students. This takes off some of the more time-consuming data entry work that they have to do, so that they can focus a little bit more on that customer service, helping their parents and students out on a day-to-day basis. So we're bringing to you 2 job descriptions today, and this will comprise a new Phoenix #1 enrollment team. As I said, this has been a project that has been in the works for quite a while. Basically, since I first started this position, one of the first things that's been on my radar is online registration. And so that falls under this, but it also falls under a lot of different projects and initiatives. So you'll see here on this slide, the 2025 strategic plan. We will ensure student enrollment is at capacity in effective and attractive signature and neighborhood schools accessible to all. So it speaks to that. It speaks to curriculum audit recommendation number 9. The organizational development action team. We worked closely with Makisa. They came and interviewed the MIS department, the assessment department. They interviewed every employee, looked at the job descriptions, made some recommendations there. We have our data governance team, which we put on hiatus for a while, but during that initial part of it, some of this data accuracy, the data accuracy became a big part of that, and how we can better audit and enter our student enrollment and demographic information. And then again, that online enrollment project, which I spoke about, myself, our information systems coordinator, Marie Clark, and also Dr. Hidalgo, in part spoke with 6 different districts who have implemented either online enrollment in a centralized basis or school-based or a hybrid fashion. We're just trying to get as much feedback as possible from other school districts who have done this before and are seeing what other school districts do. A lot of what we're basing this on comes from both Kyrene School District and Pendergast. They were very helpful in us in answering all the questions that we had, and we really liked parts of what each of those school districts did. And one of the reasons is because both are very customer service focused, and we felt like the parents were getting top quality customer service at both of those districts, and we really like that. Myself and then Marie Clark, our information systems coordinator, we received detailed training at the end of last calendar year, I think in November, on implementing Synergy online registration. Went to a roundtable of other districts that have implemented it. One of the things that came up consistently with other districts was this only works if you have a strong district team that's kind of overseeing it. We can't just leave it up to the schools to run the online registration. You have to have that oversight. And it makes sense, right? That we have to have that oversight, seeing the enrollment process from the beginning to the end for the parents. So the vision for this team is we will offer families first-class service in assisting parents in choosing the right school for their child and guiding them through the enrollment process while ensuring our student demographic data is highly accurate. And with that, we have some goals here. I won't read it. I won't read all these to you for the sake of time, but you'll see here that the top two focus on customer service. That's going to be our #1 goal from day one. And then we also talk about that accuracy of data, the online enrollment software. This team will be overseeing that. I really like that. I think it's the 1, 2, 3, the 5th point down. Acknowledge that the enrollment process is not complete until the student is sitting in classroom by following up with families, principals, and office staff. Really, it's not just, okay, here's some forms, fill these out, your student's enrolled. It's really talking to those parents, giving them that great customer service. Maybe the parent changes their mind halfway through, says, you know what, I'm not sure I do want to send my child to this school. Okay, well, let's work with you. We have some other great schools in the district. Here are some of the programs they offer. So it's really that at a district level, really offering that excellent customer service to parents so that they feel really wanted and that the parents have the best information possible to make great decisions for their children. We want to do a lot of customer service surveys, find out, make sure that we're doing a good job with parents and with our staff. There's also, we're going to streamline the student records process and how we communicate with other districts and schools, because there's a lot of that goes on in the back end with other districts to be able to get records to and from schools. We want to streamline that, give a little more help for that process to how we currently do it. And then obviously work closely with our state reporting team to make sure that all student enrollment records are accurate, where we have the most highly accurate information at the state so that we're sure that we're getting the maximum state funding. So with that, in the board packet was 2 job descriptions, one for an enrollment specialist and one for an enrollment clerk. And maybe I should have started with this because you were probably wondering how much is this going to cost? But there will be no additional FTE added. This will be current positions that are being reassigned. I have to shout out Dr. Vic Diaz, who did a ton of work on this. He called me on a Saturday night, said, hey, Troy, I think I figured this out. and he emailed me a spreadsheet on how we can do this, because obviously we know our budget situation right now. We can't afford to add more to that budget as we saw in the PPP process. So again, no additional FTEs added. I think I saw the actual budget increase was something like $400 total. So again, we're not really adding to the budget. We're able to do this using existing resources, existing employees, and again, really excited about this. And I know you probably have some questions, so any questions?
Questions?
Troy, this is Dr. Diaz. I was wondering, at what point do our specialists interact with parents? Like, how do parents know that these people exist?
That's a great question. Since they don't exist right now, these positions do not currently exist. I've been working very closely with Sarah Bresnahan on this. So our marketing will be driving people to, and I have to say this is already happening with our enrollment line. We have, shout out to Martha Garcia, who has been answering our enrollment number during this process. We're already driving through our marketing, we're driving parents to a centralized enrollment number right now. It's especially important because our schools are closed. So we will continue to do that. This enrollment specialist and enrollment clerk will be sharing the responsibilities of answering that line, both now and in the future, even when we're back to an in-person status. We will be really encouraging parents to come to the district office in person to enroll if they want to come in if they do want to have that in-person enrollment, we'll have the online enrollment process where they don't have to necessarily come in person. They can do everything online. We have to keep equitability in mind though, because we realize that not all of our parents will be able to make it to the district office. It's going to be a lot easier to go to the school itself for them. So we're not saying that this is going to be a fully centralized process. Parents still will be able to go to the school and enroll. We're just really going to be encouraging them, especially I believe for open enrollment parents, to come to the district and use our enrollment team there to get the best possible service and potentially, especially if they're trying to decide which school to send them to. This enrollment team will be experts on all of the programs that our schools offer and will be really able to help parents choose what school is best for their children.
Thank you.
Other questions?
This is Lene Almy. I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Lene.
Okay, I couldn't tell if somebody else was talking, sorry. Okay, so I know that this kind of came about from the current situation that we're in. Is this a long-term position that you're looking at?
Yes, and we were looking at doing this even before this. Me and Dr. Hidalgo and Dr. Diaz, Dr. Vic Diaz were, we met, I think the week right before this all happened to finalize these plans. So this was going to be taking place no matter if this current crisis happened or not, but feel that it really became important during this crisis because we really do need that centralized team to help out with the enrollment process while parents cannot physically go to our schools right now.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, and then enrollment kind of has a peak season. So there are some other duties listed. Could you kind of go through what will the specialist and clerk do when enrollment is not in high demand?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That is a good question. Pendergast taught us or told us how that is. There's peaks and valleys in the enrollment. So we're modeling these job descriptions a lot on what they're doing. These positions are going to be very flexible with student data. So there's during the couple months before school starts for a year, and even a month or two after school starts, we have some late enrollments that we get. We're actually probably going to need to bring in some extra help through the MIS department. So we'll have some people that are trained on assisting them because it's probably going to be too much work for two people. But then in the middle of the year, the enrollments definitely slow down. So, but there's still a ton of work to do. There's all the records requests. We see these positions as really being a support for the office managers because the office managers will still have a lot of student data things to do as far as attendance, scheduling, and things like that. And these two positions can help out with the office managers, assisting them as needed. We'd like them to start auditing the records at the schools, the physical records. That used to be done years ago. And because of, our decline in FTE available, I will say, that hasn't been done as much. And we'd like to restart that project. But then again, we're reassigning positions. And so the current work of those positions doesn't go away as well. So some of that old work will need to continue to be done as well. I will say a silver lining, and I don't know if you remember, right, but I showed that chart, I think, on our last reorg, how the MIS FTE is, dropped year by year. A silver lining of that is that I feel like the MIS department has really gotten used to being extremely flexible. We've all had to learn new skills, do things that weren't necessarily in our original job descriptions. And I can't speak enough about how my team has handled that situation. It's really made us pretty agile and flexible. And I see that having to continue. So as work ebbs and flows, we'll be spreading our talents into where it's most needed.
Thank you. That also leads me into my last question, which is when are you hoping to hire for these positions, or are you shifting the personnel from HR into these MIS positions?
The Dr. Diaz, are you there, Vic Diaz?
Yeah, I'm here.
I might have you speak a little bit on the HR side of things.
Yeah, we met with individuals who'd be impacted by the adoption of these positions to make them aware of reassignments that would take place. We're making sure within those reassignments that people are being compensated appropriately and not experiencing any adverse impact on their compensation. And so these two positions would be filled by, we anticipate reassignments. In that sense, even though this position really in full earnest wouldn't start until July 1st, because this is a position for next school year, we can begin doing that transition almost immediately following adoption of this to make sure that it's not just a light switch that goes off. You know, I did this on Friday and I do that on Monday, but really building a bridge into the peak season that you're describing, Ms. Almy, to make sure that these folks are ready to go.
Okay, thank you so much.
And Dr. Diaz, where are they being reassigned from? What department?
The individuals that we've approached are sitting in positions that are sort of being swapped around. One of them is in our assessment and accountability department, another one in our student services department. One of the things that we saw in the job analyses that we did in organization development is one, how important student data is, and then two, how MIS, student services, assessment accountability, all have a hand in that data. And we need more reflexivity or what Troy just described as agility between student data between those three departments. And so that's where we would see those folks coming from.
Okay, so thank you. So let me ask Dr. Weeks. This was like our last board meeting. We had our performance-based budgeting, and it was your recommendation that we were going to take a clerk or tech, I guess you call it, away from assessment. And your recommendation is that we not do that. And we took your recommendation and added that position back in. Is that this position? Dr. Weeks?
Mrs. Benjamin, I had to step away. We're having some technical difficulties here with Dr. Stark, and I think we're going to clear those up. Can you repeat your question?
Yes, and maybe Dr. Diaz can answer this too, but when we had our meeting, our last meeting, we did our performance-based budgeting, and your recommendation was that we had taken a tech away. That was part of the initial recommendation from assessment and the assessment department. And your recommendation was we put that tech back in place. Is this that person, that job?
You know, I think I will defer to Dr. Diaz on that.
May I answer that? Ms. Benjamin, I believe, and I do not have the performance-based budgeting package for assessment and accountability, but there was no recommendation to eliminate any positions in assessment and accountability's performance-based budgeting package. Their package recommended the reduction of stipends for the testing liaisons, which are folks at the school sites. That was their recommendation. And the other one was, I believe, was just the elimination of paper assessments. And so that was already going to happen regardless of the PBB, but there were no tech positions that were going to be eliminated.
But we added one back in. That was part of the recommendation from Dr. Weeks. Is there another board member that can?
We would need to go back and take a look at those.
Yes, I'd be happy to get that information for you, Ms. Benjamin.
I'm looking at their 5% and 10% and see that, but I just recall you talking about a variety of things, one being gifted, one being an assessment person, and I don't have that document anymore, so I couldn't go back and look, and I don't have the notes from the last time yet. So, but that was my recall, and so yeah,
I'd be happy to get you that information, but I am almost positive it did not involve a tech position.
Is that what you think, Dr. Diaz, too?
Yeah, that's my recollection as well, is that the budget packages for assessment accountability were not related to personnel. And I don't recall adding a tech back in. I mean, I certainly recall what we did with special areas and adding those positions back in.
Right, I spoke to that, right, I remember that, yeah. I had some recall of that. Well, if you could send that to me, I would appreciate that, because I just.
Will do.
Dr. Hidalgo, can we just create a board update for tomorrow's delivery?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, so the whole board gets the same information. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to see I would like for you to send me or send us that recommendation that Dr. Weeks gave to us when we went through that process the last time. Okay.
We're happy to do that.
All right, thank you. Okay, any other questions? I have one for Troy, maybe Troy. How many, and I don't know who can answer this, how many children do we enroll a year?
Oh, I can get that number for you. It's throughout the year, it's a high amount.
I'd like to see it by month, you know,
Yeah.
before school starts, and maybe again in January, you have peaks. And I know as you were speaking, there are valleys and all of that too. But I'd like to know what those numbers look like in the past.
No, that's a great question. I can pull that for you from our data warehouse by month and show you both the enrollments, and then if you'd like, also the withdrawals too. I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm mostly interested in the enrollment, but you can add that too if you like. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, President Benjamin, this is Carmen Trujillo. I also just wanted to touch base on something Troy mentioned regarding recruitment. I do want to reiterate that it is really important that we are connecting with as many families and potential families as possible. So I wondered, has anybody discussed creating a position in the district for that recruitment part, as far as somebody, because I think it's something that we would consistently need throughout the year as opposed to just something earlier on. So I just wanted to ask Troy if there's any, I guess, discussion going on about that.
Well, so Sarah Bresnahan has been coming up with an awesome marketing strategy for driving enrollment over this next year, and really working hand in hand with what this enrollment team will be to help drive parents to this enrollment team. And the enrollment specialist and enrollment clerk will really give that high level customer service to parents, to really sell our district to them, and really help show parents what great programs we have and help them choose the right school and programs for their children. But we've been really working with Sarah Bresnahan very closely on this process, and she has some great ideas.
Oh, right. Is it possible we could, well, maybe I'll bring this up at the board request. Never mind. Sorry, guys.
Anything else? I'll turn it back to Dr. Hidalgo then. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm so used to doing this in person.
I need sign language to you, but I knew you wouldn't know.
Okay, yes, administration would like to request that the governing board approve the job descriptions as posted, and appreciates your support in this process where we're going to have some dedicated individuals that will be assigned to doing our enrollment process.
Could I have a motion, please?
This is Dr. Diaz, so moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Carmen Trujillo, I'll second.
Any other comments or questions? With that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we're on to, let's see, what are we on to here? This is a receive and discuss, take possible action for the Arizona School Board's political agenda. I will turn it over to Dr. Elora Diaz, so she can kind of go over what happened last year, and then we can talk about it and come up with our priorities. So Dr. Elora Diaz.
Thank you, President Benjamin. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't know if I'll be able to do this, but share my screen so I could show you guys what we had from last year. Oh, it says somebody else is sharing. Okay. All right. So last year, the board went through and approved the following top 5 priorities for the ASBA legislative committee political agenda. So you'll see that on the left here. And we also included a rationale. This year, we're asked to do the same thing. And essentially, we would present this to ASBA. And these would be our recommendations for them moving forward into the upcoming legislative session. So what I want to do is go through, and President Benjamin, correct me if I'm doing this wrong. This is the first time I'm doing this. I want to go through each of the priorities and just see if there are any changes, thoughts, if we wanted to add anything. And again, we can only do 5.
Yeah, that's fine. Or, you know, if you want to just have people read them real quick, and then we can go through and say we agree with these as they are, or somebody wants to delete one and add something in, you know, that however you'd like to handle that.
Yeah, that actually sounds better. Why don't I give everybody like maybe 3 to 5 minutes and go ahead and just read through these, and then we'll come back together and we'll discuss.
So let me ask a question while everybody's looking at this. Dr. Weeks, will you talk to us a little bit about the DAA funding to schools, what that looks like now?
Yes, so the district additional assistance was on deck to be wholly restored, and then the state throttled back on that with their skinny budget. So we're on deck to lose, I believe, half again. Is that correct, Dr. Hidalgo? Or less than half of district additional?
It's less. I think it's at 75%.
Okay, so 75% restored. And so the one of the things that we would want, that I would suggest that we do, I look at the list here and we take a look at the kind of the money conversation, maintain adequate schools in soft capital to maintain that request to fully restore district additional assistance. That's going to become increasingly important to us as we look ahead to replacing devices for students and teachers and things of that nature. And so those sustainability dollars, along with our capital override, you really need to get to a place where you have unrestricted capital, which is the capital side of district additional assistance. It's that one bucket, as you know, that when you adopt the budget, some monies can go into M&O and some monies can go into capital. But as we move along here, more and more of those additional assistance dollars really do need to go back into capital. So we have the freedom and the flexibility to do our preventative maintenance and improve our, or at least maintain our network infrastructure and our devices.
Thank you.
So I would hold on to that, maintain adequate schools in soft capital. I think that's appropriate. That's appropriate language for that. The other thing that I'm most concerned is the potential for future cuts to public education. We really need to stand firm to make sure that as the state shores up its budget, that public education is not adversely impacted. We've made some gains, and we need to hold on to those gains, and we need to be committed to proper per pupil funding. So those are some of the things that are on my radar in terms of the money conversation.
Well, it looks to me that the top three, adequate and equitably fund the districts, is like the thing we need to talk, that needs to be the number one issue. And then keeping our desegregation funding as a primary tax levy. And although other places aren't, they're not as interested in that, I think that's really something that is very impacting to us if we don't fight for that. And when I did what Alora is doing now, I had to fight for that. They were not interested in that as in some other things. So I think we need to make sure that we keep that at the forefront in terms of our funding.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that where we are with the rationale and the list from last year is fairly well aligned to where we are this year. There's just more of it because of the COVID expenditures.
Right.
So in the 21-22 school year, I would expect there to be some legislative action that might negatively impact us. We don't want that.
To negatively impact the 301 monies? Is that
negatively impact public education as a whole, not necessarily one particular budget.
Okay. I misunderstood you. Okay.
I have a question on number 4. I'm trying to remember if this was specifically speaking to our special education departments, or if this was something else.
No, what it is in order to fully to fund special education where it should be, and it has never been funded appropriately, you have to do a cost study first to see what it's costing us. And one of the things they talk about is, adequately, one of the things on this list is adequately fund special education programs. Well, you can't do that unless you have done a cost study to look at where the money is being spent and how some districts spend the money this way and how some spend it another way, and the outcomes for kids based on that. And so that's the first step before you even get to fully funding or funding it in an appropriate way. So they were working on that when I was there, but it doesn't look like it's really gone anywhere. It's my understanding. So.
I haven't seen any outcomes for that.
No. None.
One other question I have, this is Dr. Diaz, is there, from the administrative perspective, is there any policy needs related to COVID and how it's affecting, other than the budget, how it's affecting our schools, or how it might affect our schools, or something that we need from the state to be successful?
From a policy perspective?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, in terms of if we were to swap out anything, would there be something COVID related that we needed to include on here?
You mean some sort of action? I can defer to Tom on that, but I think the policy language typically kind of encompasses all natural disasters and catastrophes. Tom, is there anything specific that you found with COVID from the policy?
Good morning, this is Tom Lind, and the only item that's come across my desk in the last couple months actually did come from ASBA, and it was the possibility of looking at policy to ensure that we have guidance if staff are needing to be assigned to work at home. Other than that, I haven't seen anything specific.
This is Dr. Hidalgo. One thing that I know has been mentioned in the business officials, and it does affect the budget, but is a policy to return to the traditional way of funding schools and eliminate the current year funding model, because especially at this time, it brings a lot of uncertainty because we have no idea what's going to happen moving into the next school year. Whereas if we did the traditional funding model, we knew that on the 100th day, this is our ADM, and we would know exactly what our budget would be the following year.
So, and Dr. Hidalgo, I've heard that from other districts as well. I'm wondering, this is a question to the governing board. I do think that that is a priority, returning to the traditional funding model. If we were to consider removing one of our priorities, is there any, strong preferences on which item would be removed to insert this?
You could. This is Susan. You could just name the top one. Adequately and equitably fund district schools using the particular model, and then you'd have it all in one priority.
This is Lene Almy. I would totally agree with that solution. That was what I was thinking too.
Okay. I'm just typing with these.
So are there other comments or things people want to take out? The one concern I have is because of what's going on, there's one in here called provide funding to individual districts to implement locally directed school safety programs, as well as student mental health and well-being initiatives. And I know that, we've got an action team that's really focused on that for the kids coming back to school next year and how that will look. And I don't know if that's one that we should put in and take something out.
Madam President, there is the CARES Act funding that is in the process of occurring in the state. We don't have any final numbers at this point, but the purpose of the CARES Act is federal funds that are coming to the state or school districts to support the COVID-19 expenses. And so the funds will be very flexible. There will not be any types of supplanting issues. So those funds will be able to be used for supplies, equipment, anything that we feel is needed to keep us functioning as a school district as we move into the next school year, knowing that we will have to do things differently. So we should have some information to share with the board soon. We're looking at mid-May, hopefully, to find out a little bit more. That might be the way the state, and the state has to put forward their plan first and submit it to the federal government. So once we get that information, which should happen very soon, then we can share it with the board.
Well, I yesterday shared with Dr. Weeks that FEMA has a grant that's coming that we can apply for. It goes to schools too, which would provide funds for having to deal with COVID, and it's pretty flexible too, from my understanding. So okay, all right. Any comments otherwise? Dr. Trujillo, Mr. Trujillo, do you have any comments?
I don't at this point. Thank you, though.
Okay, Ms. Almy, I heard you once.
I was just going to say, could we maybe just add some social emotional funding to the additional items for consideration? At least that way it's on our list so that we know that it is something that we prioritize. Though I do think that a lot of the top 5 priorities already cover funding. And so we could use it for that, but maybe just in that additional items.
What do others agree?
I agree.
I agree with that. Do you, Trujillo?
My connection is pretty. Yes.
Yeah, we're starting to sound interesting. Getting echoes and various things. Okay, and so that was a yes?
You know, this might be a little off topic to this particular document, but I believe that school districts should have the autonomy to open based on their read of the community. In other words, I believe we should have the flexibility and the leadership to say when we are ready as a district to reopen, rather than fall through, you know, the executive orders of the state. So I'm not sure if, you know, whether or not having legislative action going forward would be helpful to us or not, but it's just something that's I think concerning to a lot of folks, that we will be directed to reopen at a time when public education may not be ready.
I can add that if the board agrees that this is a priority, I can add that to additional items for consideration.
That's fine with me. Everyone else? That's what Susan speaking. It's fine with Susan. Anybody else?
This is Lene Almy. That's fine with me.
Herman Trujillo, that's fine with me as well.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? This is not a vote. This was a collective action. Okay. Hearing no other comments. You have that information, Ms. Dr. Diaz?
I do. Should I send this to somebody at the district, or does this go to?
I always had the office, Dr. Weeks's office, do it and send it.
Yeah, we can work on it together, Dr. Diaz, and then we can send it off.
Okay, I'll touch base offline.
Okay.
Okay. So are there other board reports or requests? About future agenda items?
This is Dr. Diaz. I have a future agenda item. There's been a lot of talk about marketing on this call, and I would like to have an agenda item where we can see what the marketing strategy is at the strategic level, but also at the tactical level. Something that I really am interested in this presentation is just how we're leveraging social media. I was looking at, you know, our Instagram, and we have 24 followers. In my opinion, we should make it a goal that every single one of our parents is following us on either Facebook or social media, in addition to like other ways we can leverage this technology. But anyway, that is my board agenda item.
We'll be happy to put that together for you, for the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Hio, did you have something you need to add?
Madam President, that Dr. Diaz actually just touched base on exactly where I was. So I think I'll wait to see what that is before I make any other decisions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other items? I have one question. When is our next meeting? May 14th?
May 14th, correct.
Okay, and May 14th is what day?
It's a Thursday.
Okay. So our next meeting is May 14th at 10 a.m. Any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, we're adjourned. It is 12:33. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay well, everyone.
You as well, thanks.